Good morning from wherever you are joining this from. This live stream is specifically about drone laws in Kenya. Now, the reason why I'm doing this particular video is so that we can be able to help anyone who wants to bring in a drone into the country and they have no idea exactly how to do it. And if you already have a drone in the country, learn as well about what the law says. And this is going to be a really in depth look at what the law says. And I'm glad that you could be able to be with me here today. So, what I'd like for you to do anytime that you have a question, just place it in the chat. I'll be able to pick it out, then also go through it. So, over quite some time, what has happened is people have been trying to make their productions a bit better, a bit different. Yeah. And one of the ways to actually do this is through having a drone. Now, it is a well known fact that there are very many drones in the country. And this is because of the fact that, of course, many of them are being used by professionals, that is, filmmakers and photographers, and some are being used for leisure. I know there are others that are used for research as well. And the fact of the matter is, they exist. In the country, they exist. Okay? So that is something that we cannot run away from. And what happened is, and this is what usually happens anyway, that the technology comes before the law comes in. So I remember uh, I got my own drone about 3, 4 years ago. And of course, the law did not exist. And the law actually came into being in about last year in 2020. So the first thing that I want us to actually do, and what I'm actually checking, I'm hoping sound is okay. What I actually want us to do right now is okay, sound is good. So what I want us to do first of all with this is check what the law says. And then we'll go into the charges, and then also I'll take you through where exactly you're supposed to go if you're going to pay for your own drone. Okay, so that's what I'll do. If you have any questions, just place them in the chat. I'll be able to see them on my end, and then I'll answer them as well. Okay, so what I want us to look at right now is the Drone Act, and I'm calling it the Drone Act. It's actually the Civil Aviation Act. Uh, the act itself, the first act is of 2013, but the one that we are actually looking at is the Civil Aviation Unmanned Aircraft Systems Regulation of 2020. So that's what we are looking at. And of course, if you have any questions, just place them in the chat and I'll be able to look at them. So the first thing that we need to look at is, and what we're actually going to look at is registration and licensing, if you want to be considered for the same, then categorization of the unmanned aircraft systems operation, or just say drone operations, because of course, unmanned aircraft means that the aircraft has no human being inside, and that's exactly what a drone is. Then eligibility to own a drone, import and export of a drone, manufacture, assembly, and testing of drones, registration, deregistration, temporary permits, airworthiness of drones, end of their operations, Then there is a remote aircraft operator certificate, application for the same issuance, validity and renewal, and amendments. Then there is safety management, license training, cancellation, suspension, or variation of authorization. Then general obligations of a drone owner or operator, the drone operating limitations, reporting of drone incidents and accidents, prohibited operations of drones, carriage of dangerous goods, operations in congested areas and crowds, operations in the vicinity of public roads, landing on roads, collision avoidance, international drone operations, filing of flight plans, emergency and contingency links, command and control, air traffic control communication, operation in the vicinity of aerodromes, operation at an aerodrome, record keeping, insurance, privacy of persons and property, discharge or dropping goods, security, consumption of psychoactive substances, security obligations for drone operators, acts of unlawful interference with civil aviation, interference of drone operations and interceptions of drones, then protection from personal liabilities, penalties, and then saving and transitional provisions. And then we'll also look at the categorization of the drone operations, licensing, and penalties. So this is going to be a really extended look at the same so that we can be able to fully understand exactly what is going on and exactly how you can be able to just be on the good side of the law. Yeah. Because I believe that is really important for each one of us. And if you can be able to let me know where you are watching this video from, that would be really good so that I can be able to just say hi and we can be able to just get the conversation going on. So, drones are here to stay. That's what I have to say. And the fact, so just sorry about that. Drones are to stay. So, what we need to now start looking at is what the law says about all these things. So, the first thing that we start with is where exactly is the governing authority on all this. So, drones and drone operations are under the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority, and they are located at the Jomo Kenyatta Airport. But you don't get into the main airport. There's a building just outside the airport where you go for the uh, anything to do with this act. And this act is under the Transport Infrastructure, Housing, Urban Development, and Public Works Ministry, and it is officially known as the Civil Aviation and Manned Aircraft System Regulations of 2020. So let's just go through definitions. And of course, some of these things look very normal and self explanatory, but I'd like us to just go through them so that we understand them together, because this is actually the very first time that I'm going through the act line by line, just trying to understand it, and we can understand it together. I hope that it provides value to you as you are watching this. So, these regulations may be cited as the Civil Aviation and Manned Aircraft Systems Regulations of 2020. In these regulations, unless the context otherwise requires, aircraft means any machine that can derive support in the atmosphere from the reactions of the air other than the reactions of the air against the Earth's surface. This is just interesting how law works and defining of what an aircraft is. Then an accident here means an occurrence associated with whenever you see UAS, I'll say drone, means an occurrence associated with the operation of a drone which takes place between the time such drone is ready to move with the purpose of flight until such time as it comes to rest at the end of the flight and the primary propulsion system is shut down, in which a person is fatally or seriously injured as a result of direct contact with any part of the drone, including parts which have become detached from the drone. A building, structure, or animal comes into direct contact with any part of the drone, including parts which have become detached from the drone, or the drone sustains damage or structural failure, which adversely affects the structural strength, performance, or flight characteristics of the drone and would normally require major repair or replacement of the affected component, except for engine failure or damage when the damage is limited to a single engine, to propellers, wingtips, antennas, probes, vanes. I have to drink water. This is going to be a long live. To propellers, wingtips, antennas, probes, vanes, tires, wheel, fairings, panel, landing gear doors, the aircraft skin, and those resulting from hail or bird strike, including holes in the aerodrome. Then an aerodrome means a defined area on land or water, including any buildings, installations, and equipment intended to be used either wholly or in part for the arrival, departure, and surface movement of aircraft. So, an aerodrome basically means an airport and any landing places specifically for the movement and departure of aircraft. This can be helipads, it can be private airports, and things like that. Then aeronautical information product means aeronautical data and aeronautical information provided either as digital data sets or as a standardized presentation in paper or electronic media. Aeronautical information products include aeronautical information publication, including amendments and supplements, aeronautical information circulars, aeronautical charts, NOTAM, which I have no idea what NOTAM means, and digital data sets. Please note aeronautical information products are intended primarily to satisfy international requirements for the exchange of aeronautical information. And an AIP is a publication issued by or with the authority of a state and containing aeronautical information of a lasting character essential to air navigation. Then authority in this act means as Kenya Civil Aviation Authority, KCAA. Then beyond the visual line of sight operations means an operation in which neither the remote pilot nor the remote pilot uh, we'll go through RPA later. Observer can maintain direct and aided visual contact with the remotely piloted aircraft, which is a drone. So, beyond visual line of sight operation means that you can't see the drone with your naked eye, or there is no direct line of sight with the drone itself. So, you'll see why it's important later on. Then body corporate means any legal entity registered pursuant to statutory law. That's a company. Controlled airspace means an airspace of defined dimensions within which air traffic control service is provided in accordance with the airspace classification. Then command and control C2 link means a data link between the drone and the remote pilot station or the remote controller for the purposes of managing the flight. Contracting state means any state which is party to the Chicago Convention. Detect and avoid means the capability to see, sense, or detect conflicting traffic or other hazards and take the appropriate action. Then extended vision line of sight operations means operating method whereby the remote pilot in command relies on one or more remote observers to keep the unmanned aircraft in visual sight at all times, relaying critical flight information via radio, and assisting the remote pilot in maintaining safe separation from other aircraft manned or unmanned. What is an image? An image means a record of thermal, infrared, ultraviolet, visible light, or other electromagnetic waves, sound waves, odors, or other physical phenomena which capture conditions existing on or about real property or an individual located on that property. Then an imaging device means a mechanical, digital, or electronic viewing device, still camera, camcorder, motion picture camera or video camera, or any other instrument, equipment, or format capable of recording, storing, or transmitting an image. Then an operator means a person, organization, or enterprise engaged in or offering to engage in an aircraft operation. Note in the context of unmanned aircraft or drones, an aircraft operation includes unmanned aircraft system. That's just saying that it means it's a drone that's being flown. Psychoactive substances means alcohol, opioids, cannabinoids, sedatives and hypnotics, cocaine, other psychostimulants, hallucinogens, and volatile solvents, but does not include coffee and tobacco. So I'm just checking if there are any comments that you have placed. Then remote aircraft operator certificate or ROC means a certificate authorizing an operator to carry out specified drone operations. Remote piloted aircraft drone means an unmanned aircraft which is piloted from a remote pilot station. Then, remote piloted aircraft system means a remotely piloted aircraft, its associated remote pilot stations, the required command and control links, and any other components are specified in the type design. So, this, when you hear remotely piloted aircraft systems, it means the drone where it is being flown from, and the controllers that actually communicate between the drone and the drone operator. That's what it means. Then, remote pilot in command means the remote pilot designated by the operator as being in command and charged with the safe conduct of a flight. That's the drone operator. Then, resident means a person holding a residence permit issued under the Kenya Citizenship and Immigration Act 2011. Then an RPA observer or a drone observer means a trained and competent person designated by the operator who, by visual observation of the remote piloted aircraft, the drone, assists the drone pilot in the safe conduct of the flight. So this applies especially if you have a team around you and you're doing a big project. And earlier we had seen about extended visual line of sight. So that person is located at a place where they can be able to see the drone even if the drone pilot cannot. And then they will, of course, help with navigation. But we'll go through my thoughts on the same a bit later as we go on. Then safety management system means systematic approach to managing safety, including the necessary organizational structures, accountabilities, procedures, policies, and procedures. Then secondary surveillance radar means a surveillance radar system which uses transmitters or receivers and transponders. Then segregated airspace means airspace of specified dimensions allocated for exclusive use to a specific user. An example, a good example of segregated airspace, of course, is uh, State House. So you cannot be able to fly your drone over State House unless authorized. Then state aircraft means aircraft used in military, customs, and police services of Kenya or of any other state or any other civil registered aircraft at the time performing a state function and fully converted to offer services to heads of state, military service, customs, or police, or to any other state. Surveillance means, with respect to a person, the observation of such person with sufficient visual clarity to be able to obtain information about their identity, habits, conduct, movements, or whereabouts. Then B, with respect to privately owned real property, the observation of such property's physical improvements with sufficient visual clarity to be able to determine unique identifying features or its occupancy by one or more persons. Then type certificate means a document issued by a contracting state to define the design of an aircraft type and to certify that this design meets the appropriate airworthiness requirements of that state. Then temporary permit means a permit authorizing the holder to import into Kenya a drone registered in another country without first deregistration. So we'll go through the actual law. These are just definitions. Then unmanned aircraft system, which is a drone, means an aircraft and its association systems which are operated with no pilot on board. Then unmanned free balloon means non-power driven unmanned lighter than air aircraft in free flight. Then we talked about VLOS a bit earlier. And then now we look at visual meteorological conditions means meteorological conditions expressed in terms of visibility, distance from cloud and ceiling equal to or better than specified minima. Then application. This regulation shall apply to any person who imports, exports, tests, owns, operates, procures, assembles, manufactures, modifies, or maintains a drone registered in Kenya, wherever they may be, and any such other aircraft operating in Kenya. But it shall not apply to state aircraft, unmanned free balloons, or airships. So that tells you that this particular law is really extensive. So anyone who wants to import, anyone who wants to export a drone, testing of a drone, owning a drone, operating a drone, procuring or buying a drone, assembling drones, manufacturing one, modifying or maintaining. Part 2 on categorizations of operations and registration of drones. In determining whether to register a drone or issue any authorization, license, permit under these regulations, the authority shall consider the following. Number one, the national security of Kenya and relevant international and regional obligations and commitments of Kenya under treaties and agreements, risk to public interest and safety, proposed use of the drone, and whether the applicant is subject to administrative investigations by the authority. Now, this is where it starts to get interesting, and I'll give my views on the same. Before a drone can be registered or the KCAA issues authorization, license, or permit, the first thing they say they will consider is the national security of Kenya. Now, from watching a video by a Kenyan YouTuber on the same, national security is being blown out of control, out of proportion. And the reason for this, things are falling on my desk, off my desk. So the reason for this is that people don't yet understand what this national security of Kenya means. It means that they should be able to check whether you have any associations with people who are known to be criminals or who you are. First of all, yeah. If you're a well-known person, then we can trust you. Yeah. And in this case of this particular YouTuber, what actually happened is this is a well-known content creator, over 100,000 subscribers. You walk into a place and you find the people in that office actually know who you are, but then they cite the national security of Kenya. And the national security of Kenya has to do with where you will actually fly this drone. So it goes to part B, the risk of public interest and safety. Now, risk here has to do with Do you know how to use the drone itself? How long have you been using it? Where are you going to use the drone itself? And what kind of images and video are you expecting to get out of it? So that's my understanding of the risk of public interest and safety. Then the proposed use of the drone. Now, there are two main uses of drones. One is for personal use, and the second is for commercial use. But of course, the law will go into much more. And whether the applicant is subject to administrative investigations by the authority. And this is really easy to find because if you want to register a drone, you will need a police clearance certificate. So that it actually helps in this part. D. And categorization of drone operations. And the reason I'm saying all this like this is so that after we have done the video, I'll actually go through the whole video itself and then also just check the timestamps and be able to actually give you uh, all the things that are required. So JM asks, how much does it cost to get a drone license in Kenya? I will actually go through that, and that's one of the reasons why I'm actually doing this particular video. So I'll actually go through all that, and we will go through how cheap or how expensive it is. So part 5 says unmanned aircraft system operations shall be categorized based on the risk posed by the type of operations as follows. So the proposed use of the drone and the type of drone that you're bringing in is what will now be used to put into these three classifications. So there are three main operations classifications. So the first is low risk, the second is medium risk or regulated lower risk, and then high risk or manned aviation approach. So this category of operations poses low or minimal risk to the public, property, and manned aviation. Operations under this category shall be undertaken in accordance with Part 1 of the first schedule. And I'm debating whether to actually go to that schedule and we fill it in here. So that's what I'll actually do after we have just read these three. And then we'll go to the first schedule and then come back to this page. Then category B is under this category, they pose medium risk to the public, property, or manned aviation. Then category C is high risk or where they pose high risk to the safety of individuals, property, and manned aviation. Then the operations are undertaken in accordance with Part 3. So we'll go first to the first schedule and then we'll come back to page number 7. So I want to check where first schedule is. It's almost at the end. And I'm hoping that this information will actually be of benefit to you, especially if you want to bring in a drone. So here, part 1, category A operations, and we just talked about low risk. So the drone that will be operated within visual line of sight, meaning that you have to see it with your physical eyes and at a maximum height of 400 feet above ground level. 400 feet, and allow me to just do this right now so that you see exactly what 400 feet is. And we are just saying feet to meters. So 400 feet is about 120 meters, going up above ground level. The good thing with drones is the fact that they actually tell you exactly how high the drone is. So whenever you are looking at the drone controller, you can be able to see in meters exactly how far it is above the ground. So that's what we are going to look at now. So that's maximum height. It shall be operated within that. And 50 meters lateral distance from any persons building or object not associated with the operations. All operations under this category shall be approved or authorized by the authority. Such operations shall only be conducted within visual line of sight. You remember one of the definitions that we went through. Then the drone operated in this category shall not be more than 25 kilos maximum takeoff mass together with associated payloads, meaning that if you attach anything to the drone itself, it should not be more than 25 kilos. Such operations shall be conducted within segregated airspaces and away from any notified, prohibited, restricted, or danger areas unless expressly authorized by the authority. Drone operators in this category shall possess a certificate issued by the authority permitting them to conduct operations. Wakio says she's late, but here, don't worry, you're not late. There's still a lot that we have to cover. Then part two, category B. This drone operations in this category shall be operated within VLOS, visual line of sight, meaning that you can actually see it, including extended visual line of sight, meaning that you have other drone observers at other places that can be able to see it and they communicate with you at all time and heights above ground and distances from any person, buildings, or objects not associated with the operations as may be determined by the authority. All operations under this category shall be approved or authorized by the authority. Drones operated under this category may be operated in non segregated airspaces, but away from controlled airspaces and shall have all such equipment as necessary to ensure the safe and secure operations. Then operations in category B shall be conducted away from the notified, prohibited, restricted, or danger areas unless expressly authorized by the authority. Personnel operating drones in this category shall be in possession of a valid license issued by the authority. So, category A need a certificate, category B need a license. Please note the difference, but we'll go through them as we go on. Category C is a high risk manned aviation approach. Drone operators in this category shall be conducted in any airspaces not classified as prohibited, restricted, or danger and shall be subject to ATC instructions and guidance and at heights and lateral distances from any persons, buildings as prescribed in the rules of the air and regulations. All operations shall be approved or authorized by the authority. Drone operations in this category may be conducted within beyond visual line of sight, provided that the RPA or the drone operator has the required capabilities and is fitted with appropriate equipment, and the pilot is suitably qualified and holds appropriate ratings for such an operation. So, this part means that for a category C, number one, it needs to be a remote pilot aircraft already certified with this, and they can be able to take the drone further than the physical eye is able to see, but they have the required capabilities of flying this particular drone, and the drone itself is fitted with equipment that can actually help in the same, and they are qualified, meaning that there is actually certification that you need to go through. Then is in op- the drone in operation in this category shall be issued with a certificate of airworthiness by the authority based on the type certificate issued by the state of design or manufacture. And a personnel operating a drone in this category shall be in possession of a valid license issued by the authority and endorsed with the appropriate ratings for the type of the drone. So that's what we are going through on page 7, the the drone types. Okay. Here is where we were. So we're talking about category A to C. And we've actually gone through. So category A, you need a certificate. Category B, you need a license. Category 3, you do need to already be an RPA, a remote pilot aircraft owner. And number 2, the air authority, this is the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority, may from time to time determine additional requirements and specifications for operations in each category. So even though right now this is what the law says, of course the authority will from time to time determine any additional requirements. And this clause in itself, of course, I understand the reason why such a clause exists, but then it opens the interpretation of the whole act depending on the way the officer feels like. So the next thing, eligibility to own drones. Number 1, a person shall be eligible to own UAS is a drone if that person is a Kenyan citizen or resident in Kenya of minimum age of 18 years. So you need to have an ID first of all. Then if you're a company, body corporate, or national government or county government, they can also own drones. Then a person shall not transfer ownership of a drone without the prior approval of the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority. A person other than the national government shall not own, register, or operate a drone with military specifications. Then importing and exporting of drones. A person shall not import a drone or a component thereof without a permit issued by the authority. Now, the first part I get that you should not import without having the authority of the KCAA. But now the issue is, what is the actual procedure that people are supposed to take? And I'm hoping that this actually answers this. Before issuing a permit to import a drone, the authority shall seek and obtain necessary security clearance and approval from the ministry for the time being responsible for matters relating to defense. So before you are given a permit to import a drone, they need to obtain security clearance and approval from the defense ministry at the moment. Okay. Number 3, a person who intends to export a Kenyan registered drone shall notify the authority in writing and shall obtain a deregistration certificate. This means that if you are traveling from one country to another, the law says that you're exporting the drone. So it needs to be deregistered every time you are leaving the country. So this particular law itself, number 3, for me, it is a hurdle to content creation. For instance, if I own a drone, if allegedly I own a drone, then and I'm traveling to Uganda and I want to go with my drone to Uganda, then I have to deregister my drone before I go into Uganda. And then the time that I'm coming from Uganda back to Kenya, I now have to say that I'm importing this drone. That's exactly what it is. But the problem is, if I'm going today, deregister, go, do my job 24 hours, and then come back, I need to register this drone again, the exact same drone that we deregistered 24 hours ago. So that needs to be looked at. Because if I am going out with a drone, just the same way that you would have a passport, for instance, give me a passport for my drone as well, or a document that shows that I own this drone. Wherever I am going, even if I'm going to another country, Uganda or Tanzania, wherever it is I'm going, and I have my drone with me. It has its serial numbers. All I just need to do is whenever I get to the Kenyan airport departing, I show this is my drone, this is a serial number, this is where I'm going. I'm going to Uganda. And then when I get there, all I show them is this is a drone, it's registered in Kenya. If they need to check, they can check. I go into the country, that's already done. When I'm coming back, wherever they can stamp that I'm coming back, they look at this is a drone, where's the serial number? This is the same drone that we have registered. Come back into the country. Make things simple for people. You shouldn't have to go outside the country anytime. Now, if I'm traveling to 10 countries in the month, then I have to register my drone 20 times. It has no sense. It makes no sense at all. Number 8, any person intending to manufacture, assemble, modify, test, sell, or otherwise deal in drones or a component thereof shall apply for authorization from the authority. This makes a lot of sense. If you're going to be doing uh, if you're going to be doing this business of assembling drones or selling of drones or modifying them, then of course you need authority. Then an operator or owner of an unmanned aircraft system, a drone, shall register the drone with the authority and be issued with a certificate of registration. The authority shall establish and implement a system for registration and identification of drones in Kenya, which shall be displayed on the drone at all times. Now, let's go to the next one. The authority may deregister or cancel the registration of drones upon application of the owner for purposes of registering the drone in another state, upon its destruction, upon its permanent withdrawal from use, in the interest of national security, where the authority determines that the owner or operator has violated these regulations, or in any other circumstance that the authority deems fit. Let's break it down. Number 1, the authority deregisters or cancels the registration of a drone if you apply because you want to register in another state. Okay? This essentially just means that if I am going, whoa, what does this happen? And okay. So I need to just, okay, good. We are back. Sorry, I don't know what I pressed. So this just means, and let me just go through this just to make sure we are good. We are okay. Awesome. It's back. So, yes, Wakio, there's a lot. So in this part, we'll break it down one by one. Upon application of the owner for purposes of registering the drone in another state, upon its destruction, which makes perfect sense, then upon its permanent withdrawal from use, makes sense, in the interest of national security, needs to be explained that, this drone is violating national security. You can't just come and say national security and that's it. Then, where the authority determines that the owner or operator has violated these regulations, that's perfectly fine. This is a regulation, this is how you're violated, so we are deregistering your drone. Then, number 6, which is the biggest problem, in any other circumstance that the authority deems fit. So, this is what is actually being said in this act. So, these are the regulations that you need to follow. This is the act. This is why I may deregister your drone, but any other circumstance that I feel like if and this is what this law to me tells me is if the authority wakes up one day and they say they don't want drones of a particular brand and I own that brand, what exactly do they want people to do? This in itself, it needs to be explained because some and what you will find is the application of these laws usually goes to they check the first five things, you've met all of them, and then they just say, yeah, because I said so, the authority deems fit. This means even the officers that work for the authority, whatever they deem fit. This is my understanding. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a photographer. This is who the law has been meant for. Temporary permit. And we'll go to the money. I know you all want to hear about how much it costs doing ABCD. I'll go through it. Don't worry. But we have to go through the law first before you go into the payment because there's no reason why you should be paying when you have no understanding of what the law actually is because it will come back to bite you. Believe me. Wakio says, what was the comment? Let me look at the comment again. It says, I'm glad you're making this. I have to because I know for a fact that no one else will make this video because it is not, as a YouTube creator, it is not a video that I expect to get amazing views, but I have to do it because of the fact that I want to actually help people to be able to know more about this act and know more about how they can be able to actually just stay on the good side of the law. Number two, I am actually doing this live stream on YouTube as well as from my Facebook page and from Periscope. So it's going to Twitter as well. And the reason I'm just doing this is let me just help break this down. Yeah. And if you work at the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority, I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to be able to help unpack this from the authority's point of view and also be able to share what my thoughts are on how this can be implemented better and for the benefit of the people this law is intended for. Because my personal belief is that laws are supposed to enable people be able to make livelihoods. If a law is there and it stifles someone's way of life, it stifles their way of making money legally, then it is a problem. And I believe that just from my general understanding and from just where we are right now, this law needs us like is it civil education? This is my contribution to civic education so that you can be able to understand what the law says, what it means, and if there's someone from the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority, I'll leave my email in the description. You can get in touch with me. I'm ready to talk, ready to come to your offices and be able to understand what this means. So we go to the next, which is temporary permit. The authority may, upon application and in accordance with Regulation 13, which I think just comes a little later, grant a temporary permit to an applicant. Oh, I'm hungry. Uh, if you want to support me, let me know in the description. I can put my till so that you send me something for breakfast. The authority may, upon application and in accordance with Regulation 13, grant a temporary permit to an applicant for the operation of a drone for a period not exceeding 30 days, which shall be renewable once. Number two, in issuing a temporary permit referred to in Part 1, The authority may impose such terms and conditions as it deems fit and shall have regard to these two things: public interest and national security, and the need to provide reasonable protection for Kenyan operators. Now, temporary permit is usually given to those people who come into the country, fly their drone for a little while, and then go back, not Kenyans. So there are two things that the authority will look at. Number one, which we have talked about extensively, public interest and national security. And number two, the need to provide reasonable protection for Kenyan operators. So this is what this means. That they will look at this foreign operator and see whatever they are coming to do, is it something that Kenyan operators cannot do? Is there some people in Kenya who are not at that qualification level that they cannot be able to do it? If they exist, then you may, and I'm using this in caps, may not get the temporary permit because they want to protect Kenyan operators. Now, as a Kenyan operator, this is a good thing because that means more power to us, more work for us. But of course, there should be, as a client, I should be allowed to bring in or have any operator that I want. Then, airworthiness of a drone. A drone owner or operator shall ensure that all its components, the drone components, are in working order and in accordance with the manufacturer's user manual. Number two, the authority shall require a drone with a type certificate to obtain a certificate of airworthiness. So understand, all these are things that, hi Faith, Karibu, we're talking about drones today. So that means that your drone, let me go just a little higher because you will need to see this so that when you have your drone, you have no problems. That's the reason why we are doing this. Let me just go up. So part 9.2 says, the authority shall establish and implement a system for registration and identification of drones in Kenya, which shall be displayed on the drone at all times. This means that apart from the serial number on your drone, which by that particular uh, by that particular manufacturer identifies that specific drone, the authority will also need to give a number to your drone, which always needs to be displayed on the drone at all times. So drone yako inahitaji ID. That's exactly what it means. And then the second thing, 12.2 says, the authority shall require a drone with a type certificate to obtain a certificate of airworthiness. So apart from the fact that your drone has an identification number, the second thing that you will need is a certificate of airworthiness. A lot of things. Authorization of drone operations. A person shall not operate a drone in Kenya without authorization from the authority. Drone operations shall be authorized in accordance with the category of operations as set out in Regulation 5 of these regulations. These regulations that we are talking about here are the ones that we had talked about earlier on the type of the drones, A, B, and C, low, medium, and high. So it shall be authorized in accordance to that. Next. A person shall not operate a drone in a category of operation other than the category for which it has been authorized to operate. So if you're a low risk, all the work that you do stays under low risk. If you're a medium risk, that's where it stays. So wherever you are authorized, that's where you stay. Next, remote aircraft operators certificate. Any person who operates a drone for commercial activities, reward or hire shall obtain a remote aircraft operator's certificate from the authority. Now, this is what you have been waiting for. Do you require a remote aircraft operator's certificate? Only if you use your drone for commercial activities. If you use your drone for personal activities, that means you are a vlogger, that means you're a content creator, and you are shooting yourself and for your YouTube channel, you do not need to have a remote aircraft operator certificate. I hope that's self explanatory. The law itself is telling you you only need a remote aircraft operator certificate if you are using your drone for commercial activities. And this is really important because I will go to the cost of the remote aircraft operator certificate. Now, number two, the remote aircraft operator certificate referred to shall authorize the operator to conduct drone operations in accordance with the conditions and limitations detailed in the operations specifications attached to that certificate. So your certificate will actually tell you what you can be able to do and what you can't be able to do. So when you're registering for the ROC, or you're registering for your drone certificate, please make sure that you tell them exactly what you intend to be doing with the drone so that those things are incorporated in your certificate. Then the remote, okay, number three, the issuance of the remote aircraft operator certificate by the authority is dependent upon the drone system operator demonstrating an adequate organization, method of control and supervision of flight operations, training program, and ground handling and maintenance arrangements. So this means that if you want to have this certificate, you must demonstrate that you know how to carry yourself. The requirements in subregulation 3 shall be consistent with the nature and extent of the operation specified and commensurate with the size, structure, and complexity of the organization. Then, application for the remote aircraft operation certificate. An operator applying to the authority for this certificate shall submit an application in a form and manner prescribed by the authority and containing any other information the authority may require. That doesn't tell us anything. An operator shall make an application for an initial issue or reissue of a remote aircraft operator certificate at least 90 days before the date of the intended operation. Now, let's just go through this one. So, this means that if you are applying for a remote aircraft operator certificate, you will need to do it 3 months before. Hi, Father of Kale. You will need to do it 3 months before you start using your drone. Now, I have many problems with this. Why do you have to wait for 90 days to get this certificate? Whatever we were looking at on in terms of organization, method of control, training program, ground handling and maintenance arrangements, all these are things that you can be able to show and certify within 1 day. Why do you need 90 days to issue a certificate? Makes no sense. 2 weeks to get police clearance. 2 weeks. So at least tell me 3 weeks before intended operation so that I know I have 2 weeks to get this and another week to get this other part. This needs to be structured better. Issuance of a remote aircraft operator's certificate. The authority may, it's not will, may. I'm really salty this morning. May issue a certificate to an applicant if that applicant has its principal place of business and it is registered in Kenya. So, first of all, the reason why this is in place is because of the fact that you're registering because you're doing this for commercial use. Okay. So they want to be able to associate this drone with your company. So you need your company registered. And if you haven't registered your company, once this is done, there's a tutorial I've done as well on how to register your company. You can be able to do the same. Then the second thing, that you meet the applicable regulations and standards for the holder of the certificate. You're properly qualified and adequately staffed and equipped to conduct safe operations in commercial operations of the drone. Hold a security clearance issued by the ministry responsible for matters relating to defense, which the authority shall seek in the course of processing their application. That's a police clearance certificate. Okay. And has an aircraft operator security program approved by the authority and meets any other requirements as may be specified by the authority. So, in order to get this certificate, we had seen before that you need to get trained. So, you'll need to have that security program that has been approved by the authority. And then validity and renewal of the remote aircraft operator certificate. This certificate shall be issued by the authority, shall be valid for 12 months from the date of issue or renewal, unless a shorter period is specified by the authority. The authority amends, suspends, revokes, or otherwise terminates the certificate. The certificate holder surrenders it to the authority. The certificate holder notifies the authority of the suspension of operations. A remote aircraft operator certificate which is suspended or revoked shall be returned to the authority. An applicant for a remote aircraft operator certificate which has expired shall make an initial application. So before we go to the next thing, if this stream is providing value to you, then support your boy. Send me some coffee, send me something. Very true. Shezmik says there are so many rules just for a simple approval. They have so many rules just for a simple approval. Very true. And I fail to understand exactly why there are so many rules just to be able to get this. But I'm really hoping that. So, my statement right now, if you work at the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority, I would love to speak to someone who can be able to demystify exactly why this law is the way it is, so that people can be able to understand and be able to comply and have a systematic way of how we can be able to comply with this law. Because believe me, the biggest percentage of Kenyans who own drones and also own it for commercial purposes are law abiding citizens. We are already paying tax. We are already complying with all the rules that are there currently in in force. So we want to understand how can this be made simpler and more affordable. We'll get to the money, but that's just my intermediate look at it. If you work at the KCAA, my email is here. in the chat. The email is mumowambua@zohomail.com. Validity and renewal of the ROC, that's what we've just looked at. Then now we go to amendments of the remote aircraft operators certificate. The authority may amend the certificate if the authority determines that the amendment is necessary for the safety of commercial drone operations, or the certificate holder applies for an amendment and the authority determines that the amendment is necessary. A certificate holder shall operate in accordance with the amendment unless it is subsequently withdrawn. So that's safety management. The holder of the remote aircraft operator certificate shall establish a safety management system commensurate with its size, the size of the drone, and the complexity of its operations. So you need to have a safety management system in place for your drone. And what is included in the safety management system is explained in subsection B. It shall include a process and to identify actual and potential safety hazards and assess the associated risks, a process to develop and implement remedial action necessary to maintain an acceptable level of safety, and C, a provision for continuous and regular assessment of the appropriateness and effectiveness of safety management activities. So there are three things. Number one, in the safety management system, you need a way to be able to assess potential safety hazards. So, an example, you need a way to be able to identify what you can do if there's a bird that actually crosses your line of sight, or there's a building right in front of you, or there's a tree in front of you. Those are actual and potential safety hazard, and to assess the risk associated with them. Normally, when you're flying a small drone, uh, birds come to it thinking it's a bird that wants to actually, that's a predator bird. So that usually happens. Then you also need to develop and implement remedial action necessary to maintain an acceptable level of safety. So, what do you do just to make sure that everyone is safe? There needs to be a process on the same. And then there needs to be a provision that you're continuously and regularly assessing how good your safety management system is. That's important. So we go to license. A person shall not act as a remote pilot in command or as a remote co-pilot of a remote piloted aircraft drone unless that person is a holder of a remote pilot license issued by the authority. Without prejudice to the first regulation, a person shall not act as a drone pilot for category B and C as specified under Regulation 5 unless that person is a holder of a remote pilot license issued by the authority. So let's go through that again. A person shall not act as a remote pilot unless that person is a holder of a remote pilot license. Remote pilot license is remote pilot license required by subregulations 1 and 2 shall be issued in accordance with provisions established in the second schedule of these regulations. So that's what we'll go to do, going to the second schedule to look at what it says. So I just need to note where exactly we are. So that's the first schedule that we actually looked at. And then now we are in the second schedule. I hope that this live stream is of benefit to you and it's actually helping you to understand exactly what's going on, what's happening, how you can be able to just make sure that everything is safe on your end. So if this live stream is providing value to you, what you can do, there are two things that you can do. One is to like the stream itself, and secondly, you can share this stream to other social media platforms, say Facebook or wherever it is. I hope that our Facebook family is also safe and they're looking at this live stream as well. So I'll actually go through exactly what you guys are saying. So we'll just go through the comments before we just go through the licensing. So Kiza Live says, hi, bro. Hi, Kiza. I've just shared my email up there. I know you had asked to get in touch with me. Uh, that's my email address. You can shoot me an email and we can be able to speak. Good. Osham. So let's look at licensing of RPA pilots. Now, the authority may issue the following licenses, ratings, certification, and authorizations under these regulations. So there are two remote pilot license. One is a student remote pilot license, and the second one is a normal RPL. Then the ratings issued, there are three ratings. One is beyond visual line of sight, and two is extended visual line of sight, and the third is instructor rating. Then under certificates, you have two certificates. One is an RPA observer certificate, and one is an RPA certificate for Class A operations. I hope we'll go through what Class A means. Then application and issue of remote pilot licenses requirements. So, an application for student remote pilot license, number one, be at least 18 years of age. Number two, be able to demonstrate the ability to read, speak, write, and understand the English language. And number three, be in possession of a class 3 medical certificate issued under the Civil Aviation Personnel Licensing Regulations. Okay. A student pilot shall pass knowledge tests as may be prescribed by the authority. Student remote pilot license privileges and limitations. A student remote pilot should not act as solo remote pilot of an aircraft unless he or she is under the supervision of or with the authority of an authorized instructor, or in case of an international flight, special or general arrangement has been made between the member states concerned. So if you want, so this is the first license that you can get, the student license. Now, validity. For a holder who's less than 40 years of age from the date the license is issued or renewed by authority for the period of the remainder of the 24 months validity of the holder's medical certificate, or for a holder who's 40 years of age or more from the date the license is issued or renewed by the authority for a period of the remainder of the 12 months validity of the holder's medical certificate. Okay, so this certificate, the student one, is valid for a period of the remainder of the 24 months. So, okay, so the medical certificate that you're actually getting is valid for 24 months. If you are under 40, if you're above 40, that medical certificate is valid for 12 months. Then an applicant for a remote pilot license, this is a full one, not a student one, shall be at least 18 years of age, able to demonstrate the ability to read, speak, and write and understand the English language. Of course, that's most people. Then be in possession of a valid class 3 medical certificate, similar to what we had seen above. Then receive an endorsement for a knowledge test from an authorized instructor as may be prescribed by the authority, comply with requirements established by the authority for the category and rating sought. So, before you can be able to apply for the remote pilot license, you need to have passed a knowledge test from the authorized instructor. So that's first test. Then secondly, you need to comply with requirements established by the authority. But there's also a test for that is by the authority itself. So there are two tests, unless otherwise, from what I'm understanding. And no person shall operate a remotely piloted aircraft system, a drone, under category B and C for purposes of flight unless that person has a remote pilot license with a remote piloted aircraft, a drone rating issued pursuant to these regulations. No application shall be submitted to the licensing. Oh, an application shall be submitted to the licensing authority in a form and manner established by the authority. Validity of license, similar to what is above, that it will be valid for the remainder of the medical certificate. RPA observer certificate. An applicant for RPA observer, and I am not shocked that this was just left like that because it was copy pasted like that. At least 18 years of age, able to demonstrate the ability to read, speak, write, and understand the English language, demonstrate understanding of the operations limitations for their category of operations, be in a physical and mental condition to safely discharge the function of an observer. An RPA observer certificate shall be valid for 24 months. Certificate. RPA certificates shall be issued by the authority and endorsed by the authority. Applicants for the certificate shall be able to demonstrate the ability to read, speak, write, and understand the English language, which I'll just say, you know the English, be in a physical and mental condition to safely fly a drone, and demonstrate the understanding of the operations limitations for Category A certification. An RPA certificate shall be valid for 24 months. So you will need to renew your certificate every 2 years. We'll look at the cost. So what we were actually looking at, safety management and license, and then it told us to go to the regulations in the second schedule. Okay, so I hope that explains it. And I usually just take some short break here, uh, just to be able to check what is in the chart. So let me just click here and click on reply. Kiza. Okay. I hope that this is of value to you as you watch this. I hope that it's actually providing value to you, and it's something that you can even be able to share with your fellow photographers who are friends who are photographers. This will provide value to them because I am going to go all through this. We are almost halfway to the act itself, and then we'll finish with the cost because they aren't in this act; they're in a different act. Okay, training. No person shall provide training or instruction on the operation of drone operations without an authorization by the authority. The authorization granted here shall be valid for 24 months. Then cancellation, suspension, or variation of authorization. Notwithstanding the provisions of Regulation 13, which we went through before, the authority may cancel, suspend, or vary any authorization or approval granted under this regulation in the interest of public safety or national security for violating these regulations, for violating any requirement, restriction, term, or condition imposed by the authority, or for any other public interest. The authority may seize any drone or component thereof belonging to a person who contravenes the provisions of these regulations pending further administrative action. The authority may apply to a competent court for an order authorizing the authority to destroy or otherwise dispose of any item confiscated under this sub-regulation. So this is what it means. Number one, if they want, they can seize your drone if you have contravened the provisions of these regulations. This means that we've been talking about registration, deregistration, and all these things, licensing as well if you're using it for commercial. So your drone can be captured because you have contravened those provisions. Number part three of this, what it says is that the authority or may seek a court order to destroy or dispose of any item confiscated under that rule that I have just talked about. So that means that a court can order for your drone to be destroyed or to be disposed of, meaning it can be sold by the authority. Where the money goes, only God knows. Part three, general requirements for operations of drones. General requirements for operations of drones. I think this will be of value to you. General obligation of a drone owner or operator. A drone owner, and UAS, whenever you see UAS, it just means a drone. A drone owner or operator. Bro, maybe I need some water. A drone owner or operator shall be responsible for the safe conduct of its operation, shall comply with all requirements, terms, and conditions established by the authority regarding its operation, shall be responsible for contracted services from providers, including communication service providers as necessary to carry out its operations, be responsible for operational control of the unmanned of the drone, shall ensure that it is registered in accordance with the provisions of these regulations, shall ensure secure storage of the drone or components thereof at all times. Unless otherwise specified by the authority, a request for authorization for operation of a drone shall include the following. This is the information that will be required from you if you want to do what? If you want to apply for authorization to operate your drone. And remember, you're not supposed to fly your drone without having been authorized to fly the drone. So, in essence, what this means is you cannot get a job today and get authorization today and start using the drone today. So, it will need the name and contact information of the operator, the drone characteristics, which means type of aircraft, maximum certificated takeoff mass, number of engines, and wingspan. All these are there in the manual, so that's not a problem. Copy of certificate of registration of the drone, aircraft identification to be used in radio telephony if applicable. Most of the time it's not. Copy of the certificate of airworthiness if applicable to all. Copy of the drone operator certificate, if applicable, applies only for commercial. Copy of the remote pilot license, if applicable, that applies for B and C. Copy of the aircraft radio station license, if applicable, for most it doesn't. Then description of, this is the important one, description of the intended operation, including the type of operation or purpose, flight rules, velos operation, meaning that you have to see it if applicable, date of intended flights, point of departure, destination, cruising speeds, cruising levels, route to be followed, duration or frequency of flight, takeoff and landing requirements. Now, this I wish was just applying to commercial work and not applying to personal. Because if I'm using it for my own personal use and it's a class A, it's a low risk thing, why, for the love of God, why do I every time want to fly this particular drone have to say the date of intended flight, point of departure, destination, cruising speeds, cruising levels, route to be followed, duration or frequency of flight? Number one thing that this regulation does not take into consideration for this particular clause itself is the fact that most drones never go to that 120 meters up. And in fact, when you go to that 120-meter level, you're so far away that you're basically surveilling like a whole village or a whole town. You're so far up. So that is where this would actually make sense. But for most people and for most operations, people are using it in weddings, people are using it in their own vlogs. All these operations in this particular case, you don't need all this cruising speed, cruising level, because you won't really be flying it at any speed. Most of the shots that you want to take are of, like, if you're on a beach, like just showing the beach line. That's what you're doing. Then route to be followed. That's usually not even available before the day. Duration of frequency, not usually available before the day. Point of departure and destination, not usually available before the day. So all this description that you have to do before you actually get the authority to fly it, you don't have. And drone performance characteristics need to be provided, including operating speeds, typical and maximum climb rates, operating frequencies, typical and maximum descent rates, and turn rates, and other relevant performance data, including limitations regarding wind, icing, and precipitation, meaning rain. Can it operate in the rain? And maximum aircraft endurance. Communications, navigations, and surveillance capabilities, aeronautical safety communications frequencies, equipment including ATC communications, including any alternate means of communications, command and control C2 links, performance parameters and designated operational coverage area, communications between the remote pilot and the drone itself, remote piloted aircraft observer, if applicable, navigation equipment, surveillance equipment, including secondary surveillance, radar transponder, and automatic dependent surveillance broadcast. It is a lot just to be able to fly your drone. Makes no sense. Detect and avoid capabilities, emergency procedures, including communication failure with aircraft control, air traffic control, C2 failure, meaning that controller, its failure. What emergency procedures are there? Remote pilot or remote piloted aircraft observer communications failure, if applicable. Number and location of remote pilot stations, as well as handover procedures between remote pilot stations, if applicable. Document attesting noise certification, if applicable. confirmation of compliance with the civil aviation security regulations, payload information or description, proof of adequate insurance coverage. All this just to fly your drone one time. All just to fly your drone one time. It's frustrating. And it's frustrating. Lord gracious, hear us. Okay. Number three, drone. The drone shall meet the performance and equipment carriage requirements for the specific airspace in which the flight is to operate, where documents identified in that long subregulation are issued in a language other than English. The drone operator or owner shall ensure that an English translation is included and provide a certificate of translation. Now, before I go to the next thing, let me address this. If the KCAA wants every single drone flight to be authorized, then there needs to be a powerful website or system that's able to look at, assess, and then authorize these drone applications for operations as quickly as possible. And I dare say this regulation should be authorized within 30 minutes. Okay? Because most of the work and most of the things that they are asking for people to provide, as it is right now, it's like they're requiring you to have it in physical form, meaning that you now have to go to the KCAA offices. That's my understanding. I may be wrong. If it is KCAA, reach out. My email is there. But this is what I understand, that anytime I need to fly my drone, I need to tell you where exactly I'm going to fly it, how fast it's going to be, how high it's going to go, point of destination, point of uh, from where it's starting to where it's going, all this insurance, all this I have to put in physical form and then send to your offices. And then here, I hope it's there later, but from where we've read, there's no timeline as to how long this is supposed to take before I can be able to now fly my drone. And number two, all this, if I am a commercial drone operator or owner, I should have a profile. Okay. And on this profile, any certifications that I get, and for any classes that I get, and any drone pilots, if I'm an owner and I have operators, any operators that are under me can all show up on my profile. That if you go on my profile as an owner, you can be able to see that the owner is certified to do ABCD, the operators are authorized to do ABCD, all the observers that are under this owner are ABCD. All this is available. If there's insurance that needs to be provided proof of, all I just need to is, once I get my insurance from my company, I just need to upload it and show that it is valid from this date to this date. And when it's about to expire, I just get a notification that says your insurance is about to expire. Payload information or description, all these are things that are available on. You're asking for things that are already there on the drone itself. Okay? Emergency procedures, those are important, but they can also be put online and say that this is what we are going to do if there's an emergency with this, and this. All this can be made much, much simpler, because I'll show you the way it actually looks. I'll show you. Then, number four, if you provide these documents in a language other than English, you're required to provide an English translation. This, in fact, should not even be there. Just say all these documents are required in English. End of story. Who's going to provide their emergency procedures in a language other than English? We do our documents in English. And then all the things that they've been asking the operators to do is command of English. So if you don't know English, you cannot fly a drone. That's what the government is saying. So let's move on before I get too salty. Okay. A person, okay, we are talking about drone operating limitations. A person shall not operate a drone at above 400 feet above ground level, and 400 feet means 120 meters. We had talked about that earlier. Your drone should not go above 120 meters. And there is a reason for this. Normal aircraft from Wilson, from JKIA, from Moy International, wherever they're coming from, normal aircraft usually do not go below 120 meters. Okay, so there, because your drone is so small, an aircraft may not see it. Okay, so just keep safe. You should not take it above 400 feet. Okay, ideally, it should not even be going above 100 feet. That's enough to do the work that you are required to do, especially for class A and for personal work. And then it should not be within 50 meters of anyone who is not associated with the project that you're doing. That's just for privacy reasons. Then you shall not operate except with the authorization of the authority, which we talked about, and we said it takes 3 months, and you're just hoping it takes 3 months. In conditions other than visual meteorological conditions, you shall not operate a drone at night. That is common sense. Don't operate a drone at night because your vision is impaired, first of all. And secondly, the drone itself may not be able to see exactly what is in front of it. If you're relying on what is on the screen at night, it's not easy to do that. Now, unless specifically cleared by the authority on a case by case basis, you shall not operate where cameras, imaging devices, or other sensors capture information, pictures, or videos extending beyond the prescribed area of approved operation. So, I understand the reason why registration of every flight is important. However, it's still a cake. Where cameras, imaging devices, okay, we probably glossed over something here that probably we should go through. Okay. The cameras, imaging devices, or other sensors capture information, pictures, or videos extending beyond the prescribed area of approved operation. So this means that you are not allowed to operate a drone that is capturing video or images that is not authorized. Okay? So this interpretation that I'm giving now is not what the act says, but this is what I see it. So take only footage that you're authorized to take. Okay, if you're at a wedding and this wedding is next to a big person's home, you're not allowed to show footage of that home. You're only allowed to do operation of this wedding that you're covering. That's what that means. Okay. And number two, where cameras capture that information that I've just talked about, such information shall not be reproduced, processed, shared, distributed, or published. Notwithstanding the provisions of the regulations, drone operations may be conducted at such high heights and lateral distances as the authority may approve. So in order for you to go above the 400 feet above ground level or the 50 meters away from people who are not in your authority, you can get approval to go higher above that, but you'll need to apply for the same. Okay? Notwithstanding the provisions of subregulation 1B, drone operations may be conducted in conditions other than visual meteorological conditions, provided that the pilot is duly rated, the system, the drone, meets required specifications and is approved by authority. Okay? So usually you don't fly your drone when it's raining, but you can if you're duly rated as a pilot and your drone can be able to handle it and it is approved by the authority. So a lot of things. There are a lot of things. KCAA, KCAA, KCAA. How many times have I called you? A drone operator. Okay, so reporting of the next thing is reporting of drone incidents and accidents. A drone operator shall ensure that all incidents and accidents involving the drone are reported to the authority. The authority shall establish a mechanism for members of the public to report accidents, incidents, and alleged violations of the regulation by the system operators or owners. A person who owns or operates a drone shall notify the authority immediately of the loss or theft of the system or its components. The authority shall, upon receipt of a report of the loss, theft, incident, or accident involving a drone, determine the nature, type of any additional investigation or enforcement action that requires to be taken. So, this is why it's important. This part is important. Okay. Number one, if there's any incident or accident that has happened with your drone, you need to report immediately. Okay. So the reason we are reading this act is so that we can be able to finally understand what it requires, what is required of us. The reason why we are doing this is so that we can be able to understand exactly what is required to be able to register your drone, to be able to operate your drone legally. All these things are required. Okay? That's the reason why we are going through this law. We are not going through this law so that we can try and circumvent the laws. No, that's not the kind of people that we are. We are law abiding citizens. And the reason why we are actually doing this like this is so that the moment that you want to import your drone, you know this is what the law requires. This is what the cost is. Of course, the costs are just exorbitant, but we need to understand what the costs are, first of all, so that we can be able to comply with the law the way it is. That's all. That's the reason why we are doing this. Okay. And now, in terms of reporting of incidents, anytime there's an accident or an incident, you need to report it to the authority. Number two, the authority itself needs to place in a mechanism for members of the public to report any accidents or any alleged violations by a drone operator or an owner. Then, if you own a drone and it gets lost, immediately report the same. Next, when they have received this report of a loss or theft or incident or accident, then they will determine the investigation or enforcement action that requires to be taken. So, my view on this is the KCAA needs to come up with a full website because what they have doesn't cover it. A full website where, number one, if I want to import a drone, I can be able to register there. And there needs to be set standard operating procedures on time that it will take for people to be able to get these services. Because I would love to import a drone, but if I have no idea what process I'm supposed to follow and exactly how much it's going to, in fact, why should it cost me to import a drone? Why? I'm already paying for the drone. I'll already pay customs duty. Why exactly should I pay to be allowed to import it? Why? I already have the police clearance certificate, so you know I'm bringing it for what purposes. Why should I have to pay again just to import it? KCAA, KCAA, we are seeing you. Prohibited operations of drones. A person shall not operate a drone in a negligent or reckless manner. A drone is essentially a very dangerous machine in the hands of negligent or reckless people. And it is important that if you are going to fly a drone and it is not your and you're not used to it, or it's your first time, or you're learning how to do it, you better do it in an open field where there are no people so that you can be able to learn slowly by slowly how it's done. Because a drone can injure you, a drone can maim you, a drone accident can be fatal. For the purposes of this regulation, a person operates a drone in a negligent or reckless manner, where that person, in fact, they define for us what reckless and negligent mean. In the course of operation, endangers other aircraft, whether drones or not, persons or property, operates in a prohibited, restriction, and danger areas, the particulars of which have been duly published in the Kenya Aeronautical Information publication. So allow me just 1 second to copy this so that we probably can be able to get it, so that we get to understand exactly where drones are not supposed to be flown, prohibited areas. Yeah. I hope that you are actually getting a lot of value from this particular video. This video is intended to help you if you are planning to own a drone or you own a drone. This video is supposed to actually help you on the same. So, okay, it's a KCAA site. It's taking time to actually load. Let me check if there is information publication. Okay, that one is for Somalia. So the one for Kenya, let me just open it in a new tab and then try to open this list. Okay. So left, false, that's what it's saying. published in one volume. Okay. So this is what we were reading. Operates in a prohibited, restricted, and danger area, the particulars of which have been duly published in the Kenya Aeronautical Information Publication. That's what we now want to go and look at. So allow me to show you what it means. So come here, share screen, Chrome tab, information management. Okay. Okay. So I want to show you what that actually says. And David, I hope the sound is back. When did I? I hope the sound has not been off for too long because I wasn't checking on this screen, but when I saw a call on my end, I really hope. I hope the sound is back. Let's see. Is the sound back? Hope the sound is back. Okay, good. It is. So sorry about that. I know for most of it, the sound should be okay. I probably touched this a little in the middle, but I hope you haven't missed a lot. So we go to consumption of psychoactive substances. So no drone pilot or observer shall consume alcohol less than 8 hours prior to operating or prior to reporting for duty. Commence a duty period while the concentration of alcohol in any specimen of blood taken from any part of his or her body is more than zero point zero 0.04 grams per 100 milliliters. Consume alcohol or any psychoactive substance during the duty period or whilst on standby for duty. Commence duty period while under the influence of alcohol or any psychoactive substances having a narcotic effect. Security procedures requirement. A remote aircraft operator certificate holder shall not operate an unmanned aircraft system, a drone, without operator security procedures approved by the authority. I spoke about that. An unmanned aircraft system shall be subject to security inspection at any time during its operations by the authority without prior notification to the operator. A drone operator shall specify the security measures, procedures, and practices to be followed by the operators to protect pilots and facilities from acts of unlawful interference, carry out and maintain security measures, including identification and resolution of suspicious activity that may pose a threat to civil aviation at a remote pilot station, on the drone itself, or any facility under the control of the drone operations. So, this is similar to what we had talked about before about just having a model on the same and just being able to help people get through this a bit quicker. Hi, ME says, watching from the US, welcome to the live stream. And if it is providing value to you, kindly like it and share it with professionals who you think would benefit from the same. So the specific security measures referred to in subregulation 3A shall provide that the premises used in preparing, storing, packing, including the drone ground station, shall be secured at all times against unauthorized access, which just means that you need to keep it safe. For protection of critical IT and communication systems used for operation purposes from interference that may jeopardize the security of civil aviation, for protection of flight documents, that commercial operators requesting to operate with a camera shall be required to include details of the camera usage in the application of security review and approval, requirements for checks and searches of specific areas and accessible compartments of the interior and exterior of the drone, that persons engaged in the drone operations are subject to recurrent background checks and selection procedures and are adequately trained. Hope that's self explanatory. Then you have security obligations for drone operators. An operator of a drone system shall be responsible for the security of such drone operations, including associated facilities, personnel, and equipment. Ensuring that the drone or any component that is no longer in use is completely disabled or destroyed to prevent unauthorized use, and comply with the security directives or circulars issued by the authority. Then you have acts of unlawful interference with civil aviation. An operator or owner of a drone shall have response procedures for operation personnel for threats and incidents involving drone operations, and shall ensure that reports on acts of unlawful interference are promptly submitted to the authority in accordance with the civil aviation security regulations. Then we go to interference of drone operations. Except as provided in Regulation 49, which 49 we are going to next, no person shall interfere with duly authorized operation of a drone or intercept a drone in any manner whatsoever. Any person who unlawfully interferes with duly authorized operation of a drone commits an offense and shall be liable upon conviction to a fine not exceeding 2 million or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 3 years or to both. So once it's authorized, no one should bother you. Interception of a drone. Where the authority has reason to believe that a drone is being operated in a manner that contravenes any provision of these regulations, poses a serious and an imminent risk to safety of the public, or that prejudices national security, the authority may exercise all or any of its powers in subregulation 2 in relation to a drone for the purpose of preventing further contravention of any provision of this regulation, preventing or stopping any actual or imminent occurrence that endangers or threatens to endanger the safety of the public or safeguarding national security. Again, self explanatory. But for the purpose of this subregulation, the powers that may be exercised by the authority in relation to a drone system include the following: direct any person whom the authority reasonably believes to be involved in the operation of the drone to end the flight or land it safely in the fastest practicable way, or to fly the aircraft in the manner specified by the authority, and with such assistance and by such force as is necessary to assume control of the drone or to fly it or to end the flight or land it safely in the fastest practicable way. And four, to end the flight in the fastest and safest practicable way, or to confiscate the drone and any component thereof or other thing that the authority believes on reasonable grounds to be evidential material or needs to be seized or prevents it concealment, loss, or destruction, or its use in committing, continuing, or repeating an offense under the Act or these regulations. The powers granted to the authority under subregulation 2 may be exercised by the national security agencies. Now, good that the authority can be able to do this. But then number 3 says that the powers granted to the authority under this subregulation, what we've just read, may be exercised by the national security agencies. This in Kenya, this means that any police officer, no matter who they are, can, after checking all this, can ask to seize this and confiscate your drone. Now, the thing that needs to be understood here is that confiscation of the drone is just one of the options available to the authority. The problem is that the way it is and the way usually things are done by the police is that's usually the first thing that they'll actually check. That's the first thing that they'll actually do. Instead of just That's one of the options that are available for you to take. Part 5, miscellaneous provisions. We are almost done. Protection from personal liability. No matter or action taken by the authority or by any member of staff or agent of the authority shall, if the matter or action was taken was in good faith for the purposes of performing the functions of the authority under the act or these regulations, render the authority or the person liable for any action, claim, or demand. Now, this is one of the hardest things to ever prove, that it was not done in good faith. That a matter or action was not done in good faith is one of the hardest things to prove, because it's a he said, she said situation. But what this means is that you can't take action under, or you can't take action under any on any member of staff, because if they acted in good faith just to perform the functions of this act. Any expenses incurred or to be incurred by any person mentioned in subsection 1 in defending an action, claim, or demand in any suit brought against that person in respect of any act or omission done or purported to be done by that person under this regulation or on the direction of the authority shall be reimbursed or borne by the authority unless the act or omission was done in bad faith. Okay, so this just helps staff of the authority. Offenses and penalties. And I think this should be the very last one because it talks about the third schedule. So we'll actually go to offenses and penalties. Any person who fails to comply with any direction given pursuant to these regulations by the authority or by any authorized person under any provision of the Act or these regulations commits an offense and shall be liable upon conviction to a fine not exceeding 2 million shillings or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 3 years or to both. You will buy a drone for 80,000 or for 100,000, and then if you have failed to comply with any direction pursuant to these regulations by the authority or by any authorized person under any provision of the Act, liable upon conviction to a fine not exceeding 2 million shillings or to an imprisoned term for 3 years. Makes no sense. A person who contravenes any provision specified as an A provision in the third schedule to these regulations commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding 1 million shillings for each offense or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 1 year or to both. A person who contravenes any provision specified as a B provision in the third schedule to this regulation commits an offense and is liable upon conviction to a fine not exceeding 2 million shillings for each offense or to an imprisonment term not exceeding 3 years or to both. If any provision of these regulations is contravened in relation to a drone, the operator of that drone, of that system, and the pilot, even if the operator or the pilot is not the person who contravened that provision, without prejudice to the liability of any other person under this regulation for that contravention, be deemed to have contravened that provision unless he or she proves that the contravention occurred without his or her consent or connivance and that he or she exercised all due diligence to prevent the contravention. Now, this is what it means because this is important. This is one of the worst ones. If there is a provision that is contravened in relation to the drone, the operator of that system, the registered person, the owner, the operator, and the pilot shall have been deemed to be the one who has contravened this prevention, even if he's not the one flying. So I may own a drone, allegedly. If I own a drone and then I have an operator registered, and then that operator also gives to someone else who's not registered under any of us, and they do something that contravenes the law, which we have seen there are a million ways to contravene this law, and there are so many hurdles to actually owning a drone, then you are responsible for them, even and notwithstanding any liability that that person also has, unless you can prove that you did due diligence on your part, that it was done without your consent or connivance, and that you've exercised all due diligence to prevent the contravention. Number five, any drone operator who contravenes the provisions of these regulations and whose penalty has not been specified in these regulations commits an offense and shall be liable upon conviction to a fine not exceeding 2 million shillings or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 3 years or to both. Now, let's go to the offenses because go finish us. So, go finish us. So there are category B and there are category A penalties. Okay. So that's what we want to go through. So eligibility to ownership of a drone is a class B. Importation and export of a drone. Okay. Let's do this. Let's state the class A's. Okay. I think that should make it easier. So Class A felonies. Which are the Class A offenses? So, number one, airworthiness of the drone. We talked about that earlier. License, training, reporting of drone incidents. You have operations in congested areas and crowds. You have filing of flight plans, command and control, record keeping, insurance. These are Class A. So, this means that the fine, if you're found that you've contravened any of the ones that I've just stated, 2 million shillings, 3 years, or both. Then we go to Class B, interference of drone operations, discharge or dropping goods, privacy of persons and property, operations in the vicinity of aerodromes or airports, international drone operations, collision avoidance, carriage of dangerous goods, prohibited operation of drones. Then we have drone operating limitations. We have authorization of drone operations, airworthiness of drones, registration of drones, manufacture, assembly, and testing of drones, importation and export of drones, eligibility to ownership of drones. So these ones are Class B, 1 million if you found in contravention, or 1 year imprisonment, or both. And I'm just going through it like that so that you can be able to see how the government wants to finish us all. We were at number 50 something here. Miscellaneous provisions, offenses and penalties. And then number 52, the authority shall develop pamphlets and manuals to assist owners and operators in complying with these regulations. And then savings and transitional provisions. An owner of a drone already imported into Kenya at the commencement of these regulations shall apply to the authority for registration within 6 months from the date of the commencement of these regulations. Shazmik says these rules really need to be amended. Very true. Very, very true. So what I'll actually do right now is I'll read for you because I don't have the. This is part of the Kenya subsidiary legislation number 41. So just a sec. Just need to make sure that you can see me well. Okay, good. So these are the fees and charges for services rendered by the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority in relation to unmanned aircraft system. We've talked about this. This means drones. Yeah. So this is the part that many of you have been waiting for. So we start with drone import and registration. Issuance of an import permit is 3,000 shillings. Registration of a drone is 3,000 shillings. Certificate of deregistration or cancellation, 2,000 shillings. Reservation of special registration marks series, 10,000 shillings. Copy of the drone register, 3,000. Change of ownership, 2,500. Amendment of a certificate of registration, 2,000 shillings. Issuance of temporary permit, 20,000 shillings. Then we go to B, airworthiness. Issue of certificate of airworthiness, 5,000 shillings. C, remote air operator certificate. Initial issue of a remote air operator certificate, 80,000 shillings. Renewal of the remote air operator certificate, 50,000 shillings. Amendments to the certificate, 5,000 shillings. Addition of drone to the remote operator certificate, 2,000 shillings. Inclusion of new drone type, 10,000 shillings. Approval of manuals that you are using in your business, 5,000 shillings. Then training organizations, if you're training. So if your training organization approval, 80,000 shillings. Renewal of the approved training organization certificate, 50,000 shillings. Modification or amendment of the approval, 5,000 bob. Certification of drone resellers and distributors. Initial issue, 80,000 bob. Renewal, 50,000. Modification or amendment of approval, 5,000. Authorizations. Operation authorizations, category A. If you want to be, if you want to fly your drone and you're a class A, category A, we talked about that earlier, then you are required to pay 2,000 shillings every time you need to fly your drone. For category B and C to fly the drone, it's 2,500. Then if overflight permit, meaning from one country to another, that's 10,000 shillings. Licensing. Issue of a student remote pilot license is 2,000 shillings. Issue of a remote pilot license is 4,000 shillings. Beyond visual line of sight rating is 2,000. Extended visual line of sight is 2,000. An RPA observer license certificate is 2,000. An RPA certificate for class A operations is 2,000. Renewal of the remote pilot license is 2,000. Instructor rating for remote pilot license is 3,000. Radio telephone exam is 2,000. Reissuing of duplicate remote pilot license is 10,000 shillings. Validation of remote pilot license is 5,000. Examinations for the student is 4,000. Examinations for the remote pilot license is 4,000. Examinations repeat for partial pass is 2,000. Validation of ICAO contracting states licenses for for students is 2,000. Then validation of ICAO contracting states licenses RPL is 4,000 shillings. Other services issue, reissue, amendment of a letter of approval or no objection is 4,000 shillings. So, just to go through the very important ones. Number one, registering your drone is 3,000 shillings. If you want to import, it's another 3,000 shillings. So, in this case, you'd actually be paying to import and to register. That would be 6,000 bob. Then, if you are not intending to register it in Kenya and you need a temporary permit, it's 20,000 shillings. If you intend to change the ownership of the drone, 2,500. Then, for those who will require a remote air operator certificate, which is now required if you are doing commercial work, it's 80,000 shillings. Renewal is 50,000, and you're renewing every 2 years. So that is the drone laws in Kenya. In the comments, let me know what are your thoughts on this drone law. And secondly, if you are at a position of being able to speak to someone about KCAA and you work at the KCAA, then please get in touch with me. I will place my I will actually place my email in the description below so that you can be able to get in touch, and then we can be able to speak a lot more about making this act operational and how better it can be made in order to be able to serve us as users or as intended users of drones, because most of the people, 99% of the people who want to own drones or they want to operate drones are doing it to be able to feed their families, to be able to tell their stories. And it's important that now the regulator comes out and tells us this is exactly what we have. Yeah. So have an awesome day. And thank you to the people who've been here for the whole, I don't know, we've done probably 3 hours. I will need to check. But thank you very much for joining. If you have any questions regarding drone laws, I will actually place timestamps on this live once it has finished processing so that you can be able to go through the whole of it. But I'll see you in the next one.